All right, so welcome everyone to this week's episode of Lorebeards. We're actually doing it at the time we originally planned to do this show, which is a rare treat. Um, I believe this is the fourth episode of Lorebeards, and we are super excited for today's show. There's a lot of really cool things to talk about, a couple cool things to show off. There are a lot of things going on in the Warhammer community, especially not just within Total War, but outside Total War. And this week we've got our first special guest. So, real quick, just as a quick intro for anyone that may be new to Lorebeards or is listening to us for the first time, which is something I actually had not considered until this week. I am Loremaster of Sotek. I am kind of one of the big Warhammer Fantasy lore people on the YouTubes and in other places, but I'm also very involved in various aspects of the Warhammer community. Pretty much anywhere I can stick my fingers in, I do. I'm joined by my co-host Nathan, who will give a brief introduction of himself, which we need to make sure we do this every week in the future because we haven't done this.
So I'm Nathan. I own the Great Book of Grudges channel. I'm a Warhammer tabletop competitive player from all settings, not just Warhammer Fantasy, but 30k, 40k, dabbling a little bit in Age of Sigmar now. And I love my lore. I love the universe. I've grown up with it, and it's pretty much all I know.
All right, and we have our very first ever guest here on Lorebeards. We're joined by Anticity. Anticity, if you'd be so kind as to kind of give everyone a brief rundown of what you do and who you are.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Anticity. I streamed on Twitch, but am now on YouTube. I play primarily multiplayer, competitive Warhammer Total War, and I've been in the scene for about a good amount over a year now, I think. I know nothing about lore, mostly just perusing the YouTube videos, and that's basically my main focus. But every once in a while, I'll really grind out a speed run, and have some fun with that.
Yes, speedruns. You've walked away with a lot of money from my bank account because of speedruns. um, real quick, just a quick couple of little housekeeping things to take care of before we really dive into today's topics. Is that first off, just a quick reminder to everyone that last week we started A Tale of Two Gamers, which is basically a series where me and Nathan will be attempting to complete certain painting projects to get through our plastic crack and get it out of the boxes and off the sprues. And for the first challenge, it is to do a hero or a character. It can literally be any setting. It could be Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, 40k, 30k. It doesn't even have to be Warhammer, really. You can be whatever game you want, King's War, whatever, I don't care. Just a reminder, those are due next week. If you want to participate, you can use the Lorebeards hashtag on Twitter, or you can post it on my Discord. We have a tabletop models and painting section where you can just @ me with it, and I'll make sure we will be showing off those next episode. I've already received a couple entries, and they look great. I also want to call attention to something really special that we received. I don't know if you've seen this, Nathan. I meant to post it in chat, but I'm going to do that right now. But we actually got our first piece of fan art, which is someone made this picture for our Who Would Win of last week. I just posted in the Discord of Grimgor wrestling freaking Tarex the Brass Bull. And I'll have it pulled up here so the stream can see it. But we want to give a big thank you to the artist behind this. I retweeted him on Twitter if anyone wants to check that out. But it's absolutely glorious and hysterical. So, yeah, wonderful piece. Thank you for that.
If I can just show my display. There it is. Got it up there for you guys.
Yeah, it's a hysterical piece. We love that kind of stuff. If there are any artists out there and you hear anything stupid enough that you would love to make art of it, I'd be happy to show it on stream or what have you. We love that kind of stuff. Any way that we can find ways to interact with you guys is wonderful. So, with all that housekeeping stuff, I think that's everything I had for the intro. Yep, taken care of. Let's jump into today's big topic, which was the main reason we had Anticity come on today, was that I've actually been watching a whole bunch of Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer lately. I've been watching a ton of streams from Turin, Inticity, and some other people because the scene seems to be kind of popping right now, and is recovering from CA's accidental recent attempt to kill it. So I wanted to invite on Anticity to kind of talk about the multiplayer setting, and especially because we're kind of at the end of an era here, at the end of Total War Warhammer 2, with this being one of the last patches. I know me and Nathan are both secretly clutching our butts hoping that there'll be some vampire character slipped in somewhere, but barring that, we're done with Total War Warhammer 2. And Anticity's gonna kind of help walk us through how everything's changed, how everything's been. So kind of to just give us somewhere to start, Anticity, could you kind of give us your thoughts on, now that we're here at the end of Total War Warhammer 2, can you kind of walk us through your thoughts and experience over the course of the game, where we had things like the Everchosens, and we had like this multiplayer scene really go from being kind of a casual, done in everyone's basement kind of scenario to something that's a lot more bigger and active.
Yeah, so let's see. Like I said, playing like since longer than a year now. So I came in at about like early-ish in Warhammer 2. The old world stuff was transferred over. I think it was around the time Coast came out, maybe a little bit after. But when I first started playing, it was pretty sparse compared to how it is now. Like just looking for tournaments, there were like 2 tournaments every week, just mostly My Son HW and Turin that I could find at least as a newer player. But like nowadays, and it's just been slowly up and up, you have tournaments with like more than 100 people. There are multiple tournaments a day, especially with the new patch that has come out. And it's just exploded like crazy. The skill level of players has skyrocketed. Like looking at games of players, like the top tier players from like a couple of years ago, it looks like really bad. There's mistakes left and right, just everywhere. And just watching like the scene grow from like its humble beginnings, it has really just gone crazy. Like it's extremely easy to find games now and to compete. So that's sort of mostly been its trend with each DLC. Actually, generally with each DLC, there's a little bit of a hiccup because of the initial problems, but then the patch comes
Inevitable
in.
bugs, yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes up again, and just a constant upward trend. Every time it dips down, it'll bounce right back up, and yeah, that's basically the process over the last while. I think recently, even though it's still going up, it's petering out a little bit in terms of gains, just because everyone's waiting for Warhammer 3 and sort of anticipating that. But all in all, I think it's been great.
Yeah, so speaking of patches, the most recent one, so not the DLC, which of course screwed a lot of things up because it was just wacky. It had a lot of bizarre interactions with the game and it kind of resurrected a lot of weird bugs and all that stuff. But in the most recent patch, something that's garnered a lot of attention from the community, and something I'd love to hear you kind of talk about a little bit, was the most recent patch, as far as especially the cavalry changes, at least the proposed ones. We know obviously it's still in a beta, so it's not 100%, and to my understanding, the beta and the bug fix patch are not the same patch. They're like completely separate branches, so they're not interacting right now, which is unfortunate. But kind of hand waving that nonsense out of the way, which will hopefully be fixed soon. Could you kind of walk us through? I had heard that cavalry were suffering from some issues, but I didn't realize it was severe enough to actually garner a patch. What are kind of your thoughts on the most recent patches, as far as, do you feel so I guess let's start with kind of like focusing on the cavalry issue specifically, and how do you feel about this new patch and the proposed solutions, and have you messed around with it any, and what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, so I looked at for cavalry right now. I guess we'll just start with that. Right now, they're still effective. A lot of people in multiplayer will still run them, even in campaign. It's a lot of micro, but you can still get them to work. Obviously, other builds are better, but they still function as hammer and anvil. They don't really lose any of that. But the main problem was that when they get countercharged by infantry, they trade really, really badly. And in prior patches before this change to cavalry came in, the strategy was to get a lot of those charges in just on the open field without any hammer and anvil. And after that happened, a lot of old play styles just went out of the window. And with the beta, it mostly aims to allow for that more. Cavalry isn't, from what I've tested anyways, they don't seem extremely busted in beta. If you charge a unit and leave them in combat, they'll still die and trade badly. But the main sort of tool that they gain is that over a long period of time, if they get to constantly cycle charge a unit of infantry, they will be more effective. Other than that, though, it's more or less the same. I think the beta branch, although it hasn't been explored a ton because it does have a lot of the bugs in the old patch, Cavalry, I think it's overall good. Everything, all the changes that they did for Cavalry in the beta.
Okay, great. And kind of bouncing off that, assuming they get the beta patch to be updated with the regular patch, and then eventually get the beta patch working and get it fixed in. Assuming there's nothing else being added to Total War Warhammer 2. So this is, let's say this is the last thing, which could be likely, even though we're hoping it's not, but it could be likely. What are your thoughts on the ending place for, so like, this is where the hatchet drops. This is the end of Total War Warhammer 2. What are your thoughts on where the game has ended? Do you think it's in a good spot? Do you think it's maybe in kind of an awkward place and still needs some serious things? Or like, kind of what are your thoughts on it from someone who's just really heavily a part of that multiplayer scene?
Yeah, I think at the moment things are feeling pretty great. A lot of the factions are seeing a lot of play. I think in the previous patch it was a lot of beastmen just because of the various problems, and they might still be top tier. So as sort of the meta develops, and I don't think we're actually there yet. Like the multiplayer community hasn't fully settled on a meta. Uh, so I think if beastmen were to become the dominant faction, then it would sort of be the same as the last patch where everyone just was really sick of greenskins. So honestly, I'm not sure. If Warhammer 3 were to come out tomorrow, I think where Warhammer 2 left off would be great. But I think in like a few months from now, it could be like people could be really sick of how things stabilize. But that's sort of been a consistent theme with many of the patches. The deciding factor on how sick of things people get is more the distance between patches that really impacts things. But so far, I think it's pretty nice right now. I'm fairly happy with the state of things.
Okay, great. And then for those who are listening that are maybe kind of interested, because I mean, they are very fun to watch. One thing that I have to give major props to the multiplayer community for is that one of my probably biggest beefs historically with the multiplayer community was that they weren't always fun to watch. But it over the course of time, the rules that have been kind of led by the community, because for those listening, it's not just quick battles. There's a more complex system when you play in traditional multiplayer, because they have their own rule sets, which I'm not sure. What rule set are y'all on right now?
Right now, there's two, but I think there's talks of merging them back into one, sort of the same as it was before.
Yeah, so for those listening, these rules kind of help mitigate like really boring to watch or boring to fight against or toxic to fight against rather play styles, and also kind of help keep armies like reasonably balanced so someone doesn't just completely steamroll everyone by taking some cheesy nonsense. But do you think do you have any expectations of the those rules changing anytime in the future, or do you think they're pretty much settling down at kind of with the rest of the dust that's settling at the end of Warhammer 2?
I think right now it's more or less winding down too. Early, especially with patches, there's so much discussion that happens amongst the rule makers that it can really just drain you for a good few months. And I think as of right now, it might settle down. It really depends on when the next content drop happens. Because, if things get stale, just restricting different units can have a huge impact on how the meta actually plays out. So that could be a possibility, but I think that would be a ways away if it were going to happen.
Awesome. So for anyone who's listening and maybe wants to watch games, kind of get an eye on the scene, start to watch, participate in the community. For just people who want to kind of be able to tune in for games and stuff, can you give any good advice on where they should go? Kind of like what time, like what days they should be looking at, stuff like that. If someone's wanting to like, oh, this sounds interesting, I'd love to check it out and watch people play games, where would you recommend they go?
Yeah, so right now, I think the majority of viewers are all on YouTube, although some people will be streaming on Twitch. But the best place to go right now is definitely Turin's Discord. So if you just go to YouTube and look up Turin, on his Discord, it has links to everyone else's like channels and content and so on. So from there, you can find any multiplayer content creator you want, essentially, and go from there. A lot of them will specialize in play styles. Like for myself, uh, a lot of people come just to watch me play Vampire Coast. So yeah, you can mostly just pick and choose exactly what you want. For like the most consistent content, there's like a ton of people. Just on the list will go on and on, but essentially, yeah. From there, I think that's like the best staging point. There's also the dedicated Warhammer tournament Discord, but I'd have to find a link to that one. I guess I can send it to you later. But those are like the two main staging grounds to find other people, and you'll see every day there's just multiple links to various streams that are going up. So that's probably the best place to dive into viewing it.
Okay, great. And another thing is then if people are thinking about playing, is there any big advice or like a need to know guide you would suggest for new players? So someone that maybe wants to get involved in the multiplayer, but either they've never played it before or they're really hesitant about playing, and obviously they need to go somewhere where they're not just going to get their face kicked in at every opportunity immediately by like the best people. Where would you say is the best place for people to go who maybe want to start getting involved?
So I think first things first, finding any of the discords and just asking around. There's just tons of people that are willing to help new players get into the scene. That's probably the biggest way to start diving in. I There are even a lot of new player programs too. For example, I think my son HW, he actually primarily streams on Twitch, but he has a Fresh Recruit League that is specifically for new players to the multiplayer community. So that's a great way to jump in. That's actually how I jumped into multiplayer when I first started. Found a Discord. I think I joined through Turin's, found the Fresh Recruit League, and then played against people of the same skill level. There's the ranked ladder that I made on my own Discord that has matchmaking, unlike quick battles, that will specifically find closer matches to you. And even just playing in tournaments and getting stomped, one thing that's really useful is just contacting your opponent afterwards and asking to get some games to practice. Uh, because of how CA have set up the multiplayer lobbies, you have to invite people to be your friend in some situations to actually see the lobby. And that's actually a really good excuse just to talk to people and to connect with them to get some more practice. And from there, it's very straightforward, just improving and so on, and just finding loads of people to play with. One thing I wouldn't recommend though just hopping on a Discord and going to sort of like the find matches channel and asking around to find games. Usually that can be a little bit sparse, which is why I feel like joining these sort of bigger events is much better for people.
That's good advice. That's actually a really good note there. Um, Speaking of events and kind of track stuff, to my understanding, you've actually started kind of your own system or a ladder of sorts. Could you kind of tell us about what you've been working on over on YouTube?
Yeah, so I created a Discord bot that is essentially there to be a better quick battle system for Warhammer multiplayer. Because right now the quick battle system, it just matches you with anyone. It doesn't have any leagues or anything. It's like the bare bones system. So for anyone who's played StarCraft, it's very similar to that. You have various leagues from Master all the way to Bronze. It tracks your elo. I have the list of all games that everyone has played, and you can pull data from it as you wish. So if you want to see your elo over time, it will print that. It will show your total games won over time.
Damn.
It's
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I've been working on it for like a year. Oh my goodness. But yeah, and I'm still working on it too. There's an infinite number of improvements that I can make for it. Eventually, in the long term, if Warhammer 3 like could be improved on for its multiplayer, I could get like a website up where you have your own account where you can look at your data and so on, and the players that you've played against. So yeah, essentially it can just keep going on and on. And in general, it's mostly just an easy place to find games in between tournaments. It uses the rule sets for tournaments too. So it's just like it's a really nice stepping stone jumping into them and practicing between them. So yeah, that's mostly just been my passion project for I think 250 days now since it's been live. Uh, and man,
That's a much more
yeah.
productive passion project than anything I've been doing.
Well, it's also really good for applying for programming jobs too. So it does
Smart
two
man.
things for
Smart.
me.
Two birds, one stone. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what you're designing is more or less kind of like the fan made leaderboard for that used to exist for BattleNet in a sense.
Yeah, so I don't know about Battle.net. I think for Warcraft 3 they had their own sort of their own like separate system
Yeah,
of multiplayer. It's actually pretty heavily inspired from that. Initially
yeah.
I wanted to make a mod where you could find matches in game automatically, but I never got around to learning that because there's a lot to code. But yeah, essentially it's that. It's just a better multiplayer system
I like that.
that with
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
tournaments
actually
connected
really
to it.
interesting. I didn't realize it was that sophisticated when I heard about it. I just thought someone was keeping track with like pen and paper or something.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's all automated.
yeah, would you recommend, like, if people are like wanting to kind of start getting into multiplayer and stuff, would you recommend getting involved on your ladder as like a potential place to like find people of similar player levels and stuff? Or
Oh
would
yeah,
you
for
consider it
sure.
more of like an intermediate kind of thing?
So right now, and a lot of people have actually asked me about this on whether or not the system is set up for new players. Like they're worried, oh, I don't want to just go in and get trashed or sort of not give people good games. It's designed for newer players, and it gets better the more people join in. So what me and a bunch of my mods actually set up the next weekend, 18th and 19th, there's going to be a huge launch event for the new autumn season where I think like just tons. We have like like 12 different streamers that are all going to be streaming at the same time and supporting it. So it should be a really nice situation for newer players that just want to sort of dive into things. With the new addition of the leagues, it should be helping. And I'm keeping an eye on it every day so I can tune the sort of how the matchmaking works based on how many people there are. So I would say it's definitely pretty good, but also just having connections and messaging people is a great way to sort of get your initial games in, especially if you're worried about diving into tournaments and best of threes, because there's a lot of there. To be honest, there are quite a few rules, and some of the systems can be hard to get used to. So just having like people to talk to ask questions about is a great way. And all the Discords have ways to do that.
That's awesome. That actually sounds great. I might actually start looking into that myself. That actually sounds like a really good time.
Sick.
But kind of speaking of the future and kind of looking at the future, I do want to hear your thoughts on Warhammer 3 and what. Granted, we don't know a lot right now. Everything's kind of up in the air, and it looks like there's going to be a substantial amount of changes. But do you have any thoughts from a multiplayer perspective on what they've shown so far as the new battle types, that like resource system, or any of these things? Like we know there are going to be a substantial amount of changes, particularly when it comes to like even spells and how a lot of units works and stuff. But looking at it from a multiplayer view or perspective, how are you feeling about the game so far?
Okay, so there are so many things that the community is worried about for multiplayer, and I think a lot of the single
the
player guys
multiplayer community worried? I don't believe it.
yeah, you know all about it. Where just it'll be so much worry that it spills over into the single player community. Just starting off at the most basic level, there's 7 factions being added to the game. That increases the faction pool by almost 50%. And that means the pick ban systems will have to be different. There's a few philosophies you can go about it where you either want like every faction to be balanced, or you can say everyone has access to every faction. So technically it's all balanced, but people don't enjoy that, of course. They enjoy having the different varieties and being able to play anything. So I think it's going to mix up a lot just based off of that, even if it was just a huge DLC. After that, there's the new game mode, which I'm pretty optimistic about. Other people are really pessimistic about it, which is natural, because a lot of the factions as of right now haven't been balanced around this different game mode either. So like they've been balanced for sort of the deathmatch system. You're on a field, you fight against each other, and then that's how it goes. But even different play styles, right? So for people that like kiting, just mobile cavalry archers, like running away from units and shooting at them. If there's capture points and it's not designed well enough, that playstyle just might not work at all. And also, like you said, the magic system being reworked, it will be a completely different game. Especially one thing, I think magic weapons don't lose their damage from magic resist anymore,
Right, so
right?
yeah, there's no more magic resistance, there's now
Yeah.
spell resistance, which is what it should have been in the first place.
Yeah, I think like from a design like overall standpoint, I think it works a lot better because it makes more sense for Warhammer. But in terms of balance, oh my goodness, it changes everything. Specifically for dwarves too, because they rely a lot on that magic resist, and it will the balance will have to be really looked at. Otherwise, you could see a lot of imbalance. And although I personally don't mind it too much, since a lot of games can't balance 3 factions perfectly with what, like 20 22 factions, I
Yeah,
think.
and we're coming up on like 25 or 30 or
Yeah,
something at
I
this
think
point.
of it all. So but always, and what's sort of been consistent for Warhammer is that skill will very often prevail over balance. I think at most you'll be able to beat people like 1 tier above you if you get a good enough matchup. But a lot of the time, the better player will still come out on top. Even like one of the best multiplayer guys right now, Falcon, just memes a lot of builds versus extremely good players and just destroys them. So overall, like I think balance wise, it will be in more or less the right place. It won't be perfect, but it'll be enough to get by for sure.
Yeah, and I will say, I do hope that those new modes being added will kind of add some just further variety, because I'm sure we'll still see, like, probably the most, I imagine the most popular format will still be just the classic deathmatch on a field. But the idea that you could play capture point games, or that hopefully sieges will be good, and
Well,
hopefully minor settlement battles will be good, could just add new styles of gameplay for to just keep things fresh. Because something that you said earlier that I kind of agree with is that, Total War Warhammer is a little notorious for, particularly the multiplayer community, getting a little stale between updates. And I think that's just because the game is so, there's only one possible way to play it right now.
mhm. There's like a few like tournaments. Like some people call them more meme tournaments where, they allow campaign units and so on. But that's usually the progression of things. If people are getting tired, they'll host tournaments with different rule sets. Actually, there's been a lot of Warhammer 3 themed tournaments, like for Khorne, where you can't bring any offensive magic. So your armies have to be primarily melee and so on. You have to build like Slanesh armies with, any faction that you choose under like certain conditions. So like people will mix it up in the end.
All right, great. Well, I am excited for the third game. Obviously, for anyone listening, it's going to be wild because there's probably going to be a game 2 and a game 3 separate metas, because it's likely that game 3 will not combine with game 2 until later. So that's going to be weird. It's people trying to get used to playing both games at once.
Did you ever play in the like sort of the transition between game 1 and 2? I never sort of experienced that. Did people sort of hop over all at once or what?
I did play in it, but I would say for the most part, it a lot of people continued playing game 1. It just, the community kind of split, but it was more just because, kind of variety is the spice of life kind of situation, where there's only so much you could do with 4 races. Um and So it's kind of one of those things where, particularly going into Warhammer 3, when you're gonna have such a vast change, where, like, I mean, certain systems in 3 are just drastically different, where like the magic pool is doubled, spells are looking very different. You're gonna have the 4 chaos gods plus the 2 human factions, plus most likely um ogre kingdoms, based on every piece of evidence we've had, plus the mystery Ninth Lord, which in my opinion is probably Be'lakor leading a or the all demons faction. I mean, I don't know. I think it'll just depend. Like, if it's drastically more fun, then everyone will probably just immediately jump ship. But I'm sure there will be people that hate it and refuse. And will just play Total War 2 until. But like, merging those games, I can't imagine how long that's going to take, just because of the fundamental changes alone.
Hopefully it all goes well. Better than game 2.
Yeah, hopefully better than the game 2 launch. Hopefully. Nathan, you got any multiplayer related questions for our guest here?
To be honest, not really. I don't really dive into the multiplayer stuff. Like I said, when I do competitive play, I get kind of toxic, so I try to avoid it.
That's fair. I know that feel well. That's why they hired me to cast Everchosens and got me to stop playing them. They're like, some deck's gonna have a heart attack. Somebody get up in the casting chair. Um, but that's great. I think that is probably enough to kind of wrap up multiplayer and kind of how things are going right now. Definitely something to keep an eye on, especially because the cavalry patch is only in beta, which does mean, of course, that it's susceptible to change. There may be some further bug fixes, because I think even in the regular bug patch, there's still a couple of old floaters, or a couple of bugs still floating around.
Yeah.
I don't
It's like
I'm not
all the
aware of any
legacy bugs are still
serious
there.
ones, but so correct me if I'm wrong, because
Nothing too serious. Like the game is very much playable right now.
Good. Yeah, I am excited for them to merge those two branches because I know a lot of people are really eager for cavalry to function like you would expect them to. As much as I hate cycle charging, I understand it's supposed to kind of exist. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next topic for today, which is we're hopping into something fun. We've got a who would win coming up next on the docket. Nathan, you best want to make sure you have your poll ready here in just a minute. But we're going to do it a little bit different this time. I am making sure that instead of just jumping into the who would win, I'm going to give a brief overview of each character so everyone's kind of on the same page. Then we'll talk about the actual matchup. Today's matchup, which was recommended in my Discord channel, and I want to give a huge thanks to everyone that was tossing out suggestions, is Cetra the Imperishable versus Archaon the Everchosen. So, we are going to go ahead and start with kind of giving a base matchup. For anyone that's not familiar with the Who Would Win format, essentially we put these two characters in an arena, they fight to the death, and whoever wins in our opinions, and we kind of talk through it. But the key thing is they don't get any bodyguards, they don't get any units, but they do get their full mounts and all their equipment, and it is assumed that they are basically at the height of their power as we knew them in 8th edition. So no end times level powers. So we have in one corner Cetra the Imperishable, the mightiest of the Tomb Kings, the King of Kings, the Kimrikara, the Eagle of the Desert, and Lord of the Four Sands, and all sorts of billions of names that go on for days and days and days. And what he brings into the battle is that Cetra the Imperishable is, of course, the mightiest of the Tomb Kings, which Tomb Kings are very, very tough, durable individuals. They do have a nasty habit of being flammable, which is worthy of note, due to the way their bodies were prepped when they died. But Cetra is quite tough. He's got his Chariot of the Gods as his mount, which does provide him with a reasonable amount of armor. It's a nasty chariot that's magical and has flaming wheels that burn anybody that get close, that have scythes on them, because scythed wheels are just very hot in fashion in most races. He also has the Blessed Blade of Patra as his signature weapon, which is a flaming blessed blade, blessed by the sun god Patra of, I think it's actually just Tra, of Kimri, which not only means the weapon is flaming and constantly burning, but it actually blinds like the sun, in that it literally is the power of the sun imbued into a weapon. So it is very hard to look at. It will blind you, and it slices through armor like butter. There is no armor other than armors that render magic weapons useless that can halt it very easily. He also has his crown, but his crown does not do anything in a combat scenario, so we're going to ignore it. And then, most importantly, he has the Brooch of Usirian, which is a amulet that he wears that's blessed by the most powerful god now in Nehekara, Usirian, god of the underworld. And the big thing with that is that it not only protects him from all forms of damage, but it makes him virtually immune to the effects of spells. Then, on the other side, we have Archaon the Everchosen, who is a reasonable wizard. He's not a amazing wizard, but he's a decent caster. He's able to come in with a couple of different lores of magic. We will assume he has the lore of fire in this matchup, as it's the lore most commonly associated with him. And it's the one he shows up with in Total War Warhammer. You could assume, I think, also that he could come in with the lore of Tzeentch, but either way, he does have some burning goodness. He has, for his equipment, the Slayer of Kings, a very, very famous sword with a bloodthirster named Uzul trapped within it. The Slayer of Kings is also one of those weapons that likes to just cut through armor like it's not even there. Contrary to popular belief in the way it's presented, though, it does not actually burn. It is not a flaming weapon. Many people think it does, because whenever he waves it around, it looks like it's on fire, but that's just because it's so evil. I guess it's just what an evil aura looks like in Warhammer Fantasy. He also has the armor of Morkar, which is one of the more superior sets of chaos armor that's ever been unleashed in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, worn by the first ever chosen Lord Morkar, Morkar the Uniter. It's just really strong armor. It's really good at protecting him from dangerous threats. Then he also has his own crown, but just like Cetra's, it does not actually do anything in a combat scenario. And then he has the Eye of Shirian, which slots into a kind of a third eye placement and allows him to see many futures, and basically allows him to see attacks coming from all these different futures, and he attempts to dodge them, and also gives him his ability to control the winds of magic, and makes him very, very good at dodging and looking for opponents' weak spots. And then finally, of course, he is riding his noble, horrifying steed, the steed of the apocalypse, who's not actually a horse, Dorger, who is a demonic steed, and Creative Assembly really needs to fix how tiny that thing is, because in Total War it's a pony, and in fantasy it's supposed to be larger than, it's supposed to be almost griffin sized. It's supposed to be much larger than it actually is. Dorger is supposed to be a big boy, but because he's not actually a horse, he's a terrifying demon that just happens to take the shape of a horse. So those are what those individuals are going to be bringing into the arena. So why don't we start with Nathan for today? Nathan, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Between both characters, I don't know. Archaon's a good fighter, but in many campaigns that he's been introduced in lore, he's lost a lot. He has done a lot of damage, but he has lost. Cetra, yeah, a lot of people might see him as not a competent fighter, but actually in lore, he's known to be well, really, really competent. The fact is, not just even if we just reference the end times very briefly, where he wasn't even overpowered or anything, he still manages to decapitate a bloodthirster, no problem. I'd have to say strength-wise and possibly years of experience, despite the fact that Archaon obviously can see a little bit into the future, I'd say Cetra. Just, it is power level coming in with age. Cetra also has good magic, despite the fact that in Warhammer 2, it's kind of shit. In Tabletop, it was pretty decent. I'm going to go with my boy Cetra. It's always going to have to be Cetra for this.
Okay, so and if you had to kind of like pin down your major reasoning, like what is it about Cetra that you think puts him above Archaon? Oh, I need to start that poll on my chat, but
Yeah, issues with YouTube back office trying to actually get it up. So when it comes to Cetra being well, look, we've got thousands of years of experience in terms of combat. The guy's clearly learned to master as much as possible. We know in lore, as he took over different areas, he would learn from the races that he took over from, the cultures and so on. So obviously, this guy is geared to fight whatever comes his way. Literally the only reason why he hasn't taken over the world with his armies and so on is because of the age issue, where obviously then he ended up being Tomb Kingified, and it's just that. We can tell that he is, and someone's actually spamming his titles in my chat.
But I've also seen that, yes.
It's just the thing of Cetra just having so much of a wealth of knowledge in terms of different fighting styles and so on. Archaon, I like him, but he's brute force. And we've known in lore that he can't keep his composure. Eventually, he'll slip up and he messes up, which is how it happens with a lot of different campaigns where he's been shown off. He'll do loads of damage, and then he'll get angry, and it's the typical villain trope that he'll just screw up, and then he'll get beaten and cry, because that's what he does.
So, and I do think it's worth noting, for anyone kind of listening in that's wondering about some of their little attributes, that Cetra is capable of casting and dealing with magic. Cetra is what you would call technically a wizard, in the sense that he has a very terrible casting ability. He's one of those people that would not have gotten invited to Hogwarts, but because he didn't get invited, he got super pissed off and forced himself to learn enough magic to be able to use it. But the Brute of Assyrian does make him literally immune to magic. I mean, even Nagash going all out can't touch Cetra with magic. And The other thing is that Nathan is right. Cetra does have many more years of experience in battle than Archaon does, and that Cetra has been around for thousands of years, including the hundreds of years he was alive. And Archaon, even in the best case scenario, with the time wibbly wobbly nonsense of the Realm of Chaos, has maybe been around for a few centuries.
300-ish, I think.
Yeah, I think he's been like actually alive for like maybe one or two, but in the Realm of Chaos, it's been more like 4 or 5 or some nonsense. But he definitely has not hit a millennia.
End Times book classified him as being born shortly after the death of Asavarkul.
Yeah, so yeah, real world, then he's a little over 200 years old. But the other thing, but in defense of Archaon, another thing worth noting is that Cetra has been killed before by Chaos Champions. There was an extremely lucky Chaos Champion with a giant flaming axe who killed Cetra, which led to the Norskin invasion incident where Cetra proceeded to kill literally everybody because he was so upset about it. So Anticity, what are your I know like lore isn't really your purview, but kind of hearing some of the kind of the stage that's being set, what are your thoughts?
I think one important point that I'm wondering though is the mounts, right? Because on one hand you have a chariot versus a giant horse. I feel like the chariot doesn't do much, but I don't know how good, like how god tier this chariot is.
So it is.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing. Cetra's chariot is, I believe, the best and most powerful chariot in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Like it's literally god tier, S tier. Dorger is also though literally a beast. However, the Chariot of the Gods is one of the few things that would be able to hurt Dorger very well. I mean, he is a demonic creature, but the Chariot is literally this giant blessed steamroller with just flaming swords on it that is pulled by undead steeds that cannot be spooked and are just going to keep running forward until they're obliterated. And it is worth noting that it is very intentionally noted that Cetra's aura, his protective barrier given off by Usirian, does protect his chariot as well as himself. Where the same cannot be said for Dorger in the Eye of Shirian. Dorger does not get any benefits from like Archaon can kind of direct him out of the way, but you know when those two slam into each other, Dorger's protection kind of almost entirely comes from the fact that he's just a demonic creature, therefore is kind of intangible and difficult to wound.
Then one more question. Which one is faster? Because I feel like Archaon gets an edge purely from being higher up to pick and choose his fight more or less.
I would probably say that. So I would say Cetra is faster in most, and Cetra does have reach because he does have his big old halberd thing.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I would say I would say Archaon's faster than Cetra, but Cetra is tougher than Archaon. Being a Tomb King, he doesn't need his organs. Like it's like as long as his body isn't completely falling apart, he's fine. And he does not rely on magical armor. He relies more on like his skill in combat and also his just natural toughness and the Brute of Assyrian's kind of barrier protecting him. Whereas Archaon does rely on armor. The armor of Morkar, but the armor of Morkar would offer 0 defense against the Blessed Blade of Petra. It literally is so hot it would just cut right through it. But so it's kind of tricky. And Archaon, to his credit, Archaon does have a no shit button with the Slayer of Kings. It's how he killed Grimgor, which is that Archaon can basically give himself the speed and the skill of a bloodthirster. But if he does that, the blade also starts attacking him. So he literally is like hurting himself and potentially stabbing because the blade's trying to kill him as this demon is raging and he's using its power. So it kind of comes down to, do you think if Archaon presses the oh shit button, which he almost certainly would be able to, would he be able to kill Cetra fast enough before it starts to turn against him and then Cetra gets the advantage?
The way I see it going down, I don't think, just based on the descriptions, I don't think Archaon would take Cetra off his mount, but Cetra could get Archaon off of his. and then much like Warhammer multiplayer, it's just cycle charging, just slamming into him. And if he triggers his sword or whatever, I imagine Cetra can just disengage and keep distance. So
That is true. I actually didn't
Yeah.
think about that. If Cetra actually played it smart and realized Archaon's sword was turning on him, he could literally just run away. Um. So that's interesting. So it sounds like we've got 2 votes for Cetra, essentially. Though I do think this is a good matchup. And obviously, for anyone listening, there are weird things that could happen. Dorger is not a horse. He is a shape-shifting demon that just happens to take the form of a horse. It has been noted that Dorger does have the ability to basically turn some of his body into smoke, which is why he has the Strider rule. It essentially kind of represents him like gliding across the field, because he doesn't typically like run in a physical form unless he's trying to run you over. I think for me personally, it's a tough one. I think that I honestly think I would go on Team Archaon for this one. I'm gonna be the contrarian on this. When I did the poll in my chat actually voted Archaon came out on top. And the reason I think that Archaon would come on top is I do think that when the 2 things would slam into each other, I actually think the Chariots of the Gods would lose. And I think that's because at the end of the day, while it is a blessed and powerful thing, Dorger is a literal beast and would absolutely just obliterate some of those skeletal steeds pulling it, even with its magical aura. And I think once the chariot starts to go down, I think Cetra would kill Dorger very quickly, and it would turn into an infantry fight. And I think that Archaon with the Eye of Shirian in his head and being able to pop Uzul when he absolutely needed it, I honestly think that his skill and speed would allow him to overwhelm Cetra because of Cetra's arrogance. I think Cetra would get complacent and like would keep pushing his advantage more and more, especially as Archaon continued to try to use things to beat Cetra that wouldn't work. You know, he's like, oh, I'm going to try and cast fire magic, and Cetra's brooch is just like, that's cute. But who knows? Maybe Archaon could sneak through a spell and light his sword on fire, in which case it'd be instant game over for Cetra. Cetra is flammable. If you could stab Cetra with a flaming weapon, that's what we saw happen with that Norskin champion, was that he hit him with a giant fire axe, and that instantly caused Cetra to be incinerated. That being said, I do think that Archaon would come out horribly beat up. But this is a fun matchup, and I'm really curious to see what people think about it in the comments once this is up on the YouTubes and all the various places.
It's a weird one because both of them are good fighters in their own right. Like you said, obviously, Archaon has a lot of benefits because he's got literal plot armor, like with every single blessed weapon he has and so on. But I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to keep with Cetra because, yeah, he got killed off by some random Norscan, like you said. We have to take into account that this happens a lot, but Cetra keeps coming back because unless he gets fully destroyed, he's gonna keep coming back.
True.
So, and he's kind of like that spiteful asshole type of sense. So yeah, you might beat him once, but like what happened with the Warlord, I'll go back and get you type of thing.
Yeah, and you know, and I will say for Archaon, trying to remove his plot armor can be tricky, but he does have a lot of really powerful assets. I mean, having all 4 marks of the Dark Gods is nothing to sneeze at. He does have also the best lore you can take against Cetra. Granted, getting off magic against Cetra is nearly impossible. But and in a lot of ways, they kind of almost have a funny one tick for tack system going. We're like, oh, Cetra can blind Archaon using the Blessed Blade of Petra to kind of throw him off because it's literally like staring into the sun. But on the other hand, Archaon has the Mark of Nurgle, so he's surrounded by flies and all this other nasty stuff that makes him hard to look at. Cetra's got this amazing brooch that gives him this aura that almost nothing can penetrate. Archaon's got one of the most powerful things to avoid damage in his forehead. Both of their swords cut through armor like it's not even there. They both have S-tier mounts. They're both super strong. They're both super fast. They are I think they're very evenly matched. Uh, Granted, I do wish in Total War so much that the Chariot of the Gods was more like it's supposed to be. Uh, Stupid War Sphinx. I hate that thing so much. Cetron on a War Sphinx triggers me worse than him being on a horse, and him being on a horse is so not okay from a lore perspective.
It's a weird thing. I don't like monstrous mounts myself, so I just like go for the chariot mostly.
Oh yeah, but let's quickly change topic before we get off on a huge rant. So the next thing we have is actually a pretty brief little showcase, which is that so I saw this in my Discord community, and I don't know how recent this is, but it just came up in my community. Is that some people in the community discovered the art stations of some of the people who have been working on Warhammer 3 art. So I will have these links posted in relevant places, like in the when this goes live on YouTube, in the YouTube description and such, as well as you can find it in our Discords. But we have the lovely woman, Miss Minkova. I would try and pronounce her first name, but I butcher it and I don't want to do that. Who did some absolutely amazing concept art for Katerin, which shows off just a ton of details for Katerin, like all of the rings on her fingers, her hat, her necklaces, her cape, and it's just beautiful and amazing to look at. And she also has some art up of the various types of ice witches. And then we also, unfortunately, he no longer works for CA, but we have some renders on Danny Sweeney's page where we have these really nice up close and in-depth shots of Kostaltin, the second legendary lord for Kislev. So I'm going to have these in relevant places just so people can kind of check them out. They're really awesome to look at. They're beautiful models, and you can kind of familiarize yourselves with the creators. It's not unusual for creators like this to actually occasionally like open commissions and stuff in addition to the regular work they do. So it's a good Artstation is a great place to find these creators and to follow their work, whether you could see their work in future games, maybe even catch hints of things that have not necessarily been revealed. Fun fact for anyone that's a Total War Warhammer fan, the way we found out about the Bone Giant for the Tomb Kings was actually because of Artstation, not because of Creative Assembly. One of the artists posted their work, their concept art of the Bone Giant, which I believe was not actually intended to release, and then it got so much traction because everybody wanted it that they ended up tossing it into the Skulls for the Skull Throne event, and we got it, which was awesome. So if you're just looking for a way to scratch that Total War Warhammer 3 itch, I'd really recommend checking those out. Because there's just some absolutely beautiful art. And then one of our big topics for today, and something where Nathan's going to be taking the reins for a good bit, is that today we want to talk a good bit about Araby. We want to talk about its background, we want to talk about its units, we want to talk about why it's important, and something that we will be speaking about often as kind of something we're pushing for in the future. But Nathan, why don't you kind of take us away?
Sorry, I was looking at the concept art. There's just some things there that just kind of blew my mind because I didn't look at some of them, but it's just some other stuff was just absolutely amazing. Like that initial sketch provided by Games Workshop thing on Katerin herself. That was very, very cool. But sorry, let's go on to Araby, as of course this is something that I talk about every now and then on the channel. And people get very pissed off because I keep talking about freaking Araby, but I am going to keep talking about Araby until we eventually get it in some way, shape, or form, or I just
no. There's no or. there is. This is a hostage situation, not a negotiation.
So Araby, one of, funny enough, in the more or less Time of Free Emperors and so on, one of the most important factions in terms of lore, which constantly gets brushed off aside. It's always been a hot topic when it comes to Creative Assembly and Games Workshop and stuff like that. I mean, there was a little bit of a drama when it came to the Total War Discord once, where they said that they might just ban the word Araby, but that was kind of swept aside after a while. The issue when that happens is because people get misconceptions about the country. And this happens if you go on to stuff like the Wikipedia, which is fan source, and people put some stuff there which isn't lore. And a lot of people will get the wrong impression of perhaps one of the most interesting human nations, in my opinion, at the very least, in the whole Warhammer Fantasy universe. It's something which I'm very passionate about because, you know, we talk about them a lot. And if it's the ever case that we do get, say, for example, as you can see, Sotek and I have the books out, Dogs of War, it's very likely that we will see some Araby stuff included, because while I would like them to be their own separate thing, and I'm sure a lot of people would too, we're going to find them here if we ever get a Dogs of War, because it's a Dogs of War army, it's a Dogs of War faction. Now, let's start off with, shall we go on to what we see onto the Dogs of War stuff, or do you want to go for some background lore, or?
That's up to you. Where would you like to start?
Well, let's go for a little bit of background. Obviously, Araby itself, like the rest of the Warhammer Fantasy universe, spoilers in case you haven't noticed it by now in the 30 odd years that the series has existed, it's based on a lot of our real world history. Araby itself has a lot of influence when it comes from older Arabic and Muslim lore and stuff like that. You know, mythology from that system, even some old history, a lot of fantasy elements too, like Arabian Nights. This has always been the case for Warhammer Fantasy. If you haven't noticed that, the early Warhammer Fantasy developers were big nerds, and a lot of them weren't very original, but they brought it into a way that made Warhammer Fantasy a lot more special. So if you're looking towards Araby in terms of a aesthetic, you're looking at the 40 Thieves, you're looking at the Moors, you're looking at a little bit of Persian too. It really depends on what part of the lore and what year that lore was released. So what we have in the lore itself, not so much in this type of the timeline. It's because obviously Araby at that point had been kind of functionally destroyed, but it's focused around a sultanate. So there's sultans around different areas. There's a grand sultan too at one point. You've got all the deserts. You've got all the typical stuff where obviously cities and towns are built closer to the ocean or closer to oasis and so on, where there are two kind of different cultures. You've got the typical, Sultan Arabs in that sense, building up with really big castles and so on, lots of heavily defended walls. And you've also got nomads too, but the nomads themselves weren't really seen too much in lore in the later years, as that was later then pushed towards a type of human that lived throughout the areas of the Tomb Kings instead. So it is what happened in the lore is, and this is what a lot of people get wrong, a lot of people think that Araby itself was seen as a evil human nation, where functionally we've really not had a evil human faction barring, say, Chaos, because I wouldn't even call the Norskins evil whatsoever. It's just Warhammer Total War kind of does not represent Norska as it should be, in my honest opinion. So
they are heavily simplified.
Yeah,
to make it easy.
Heavily. And it's one of those things where a lot of people don't, they see them as, it's really tough to say this in a sense, but a lot of people put really bad stereotypes where a lot of people see them as, oh yeah, they're slavers, they're this, they're that. It's like, no, that's not the case. In fact, Araby was mostly known through trade. They were some of the most proficient traders in what would be considered the Old World. Sure, they're a bit off, but it's close enough to the Old World to be considered Old World. They were known for being able to deal with the heat very well. They fought a lot against the Tomb Kings, because obviously Cetra and a lot of other Tomb Kings wanted to enslave them. The problem why a lot of people see them as an evil faction is because there was a sultan known as Jafar. Yes, it's a stupid name, but we'll move past that. And he was a tyrant.
It's just very obviously inspired by a certain character.
So what happened there is he took over, and when a tyrant takes over, that will make people think of a different race as, oh, these people are obviously evil. But no, this man was the reason why Araby moved in to attack Talia Estalia, even moving in a little bit into Bretonia too. And it took a combined force of Talia Estalia, the Border Princes, the Empire, and Bretonia, a little bit of a breath there, to actually beat back Araby. And the idea was the Crusades were not to destroy Araby, but to liberate Araby.
Yeah, kind of to slide in with a couple of also notes is that Araby, like Nathan said, isn't just like, there are a lot of aspects of Warhammer Fantasy that, as we've gotten on in years, are like very simplified or very standardized, I think is a good word for it. But Araby wasn't really one of them back in the day. Of that, Araby had these different subcultures, and there was a time in their history when you could think of them as, I guess, more villainous, where like Araby kind of when it first popped up on the global, from a lore perspective, when it popped up on the global stage, was as the Corsairs of Araby, which were functionally pirates. And the pirates do still exist. The Arabian pirates are a faction, but they are not part of the country of Araby. They're kind of this almost they're kind of like what the Sartosans almost are to Talea, where they're very close to one another, and to the fact that you could kind of identify them as the same culture, but there is a significant difference between the two of them. Your Arabian Corsairs are your slavers. The Arabians themselves, where you're dealing with your emirs and your sheiks and your sultans, are much more designed to deal with the rest of the world. They are hardcore traders. They have a lot of sorcerers and people that specialize in rare and exotic magics. They're really, really big on launching expeditions, and they're brave almost to the point of probably stupidity when it comes to messing with the Lizardmen and the Tomb Kings. But one of the things that is super important to note, just like Nathan said, is that evil Araby only existed under the Sultan Jafar. And the whole thing with Jafar is that there's a lot of really big notes that the reason Araby was loyal, or the reason Jafar had so much power, is because Jafar completely changed the game. He was the equivalent of someone showing up, like, if you have all these people fighting with arrows and stone axes, he was the equivalent of someone showing up with a gun. Because he's the guy who first showed up able to wield genies. He was the guy who tamed the demons of the desert, whatever they may be, whether they were elementals or actual demons. He figured that out because he made deals with Tzeentch, he made deals with the Skaven. He was willing to do anything to acquire power, and he was cruel. So he comes wandering in, and the thing about Araby is that they're very, very deeply tied to oaths of loyalty. That you have this culture that completely, so deeply revolves around the idea of loyalty, that when even the Arabian Corsairs, who are pirates, are so much of loyalists, that the whole problem with them and Talea, because we get much of the perspective due to the Dogs of War, which is a Talaean focused narrative, the Talaeans found the Arabian Corsairs to be really annoying, because like when it came to Sartosan pirates or Norscan pirates, they could bribe them. The Talaeans could like get them to stop attacking us by hiring them as mercenaries. They couldn't do that with the Arabians. Whenever they would try to capture the Arabians or like hire them or something, they would refuse and be insulted by it, because to them loyalty is what mattered, and their loyalty was to the pirate kings. Once the pirate kings were defeated and captured, once they were finally shut down and Jafar took over, everyone's loyalty was tied back to Jafar. Jafar played the system, so everyone had to serve him until, like Nathan said, all of the old world teamed up, basically, and we got the Crusades, which were insane and brutally fought. And it's worth noting that the Crusades almost lost a number of times. I mean, Talea was barely saved by a freak accident that killed Jafar's top general. I think his name was Amir the Cruel or something like that.
Yeah.
But like he literally cornered the Knights of the Blazing Sun. He cornered them and all the resistance that was left in the capital and was going to kill them, and a statue of Myrmidia breaks and falls and kills him. Like the statue falls over, crushes the general and his men, and that freak accident causes the Arabians to panic, and the knights are able to chase them off, and that's why the Knights of the Blazing Sun worship Myrmidia, is because a statue of her literally saved their asses. Which, you know, as far as divine intervention goes, that's a pretty obvious one. So I can understand why they did that.
It's also really important to note that the people of Araby did not want to live under Jafar. They knew they were getting oppressed, because as the Crusades moved into Araby and the city-states were liberated, a lot of Arabians then joined up with the Crusaders.
Yes.
Because they just wanted their territories back.
Yeah, Jafar was almost arguably defeated and killed more because of rebellions than he was by the actual Crusades.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he was abandoned at the last second by his chaotic allies, which, you know, Skaven. Skaven and Tzeentch, the most dependable friends. But
I love that.
But and that I think it's a really important thing to focus there, is that they're not evil. And the idea of that is just ridiculous. The only evil humans are just flat out warriors of chaos, and even then there's a surprising amount of nuance about why people become warriors of chaos.
Exactly.
You know, we got to simplify it for video games where like you just got a faction, you just want to slap soldiers together. But as far as like, Araby is not a offensive portrayal. It is a surprisingly nuanced faction. Which why don't you if you're ready to, and I mean, if you got more notes, feel free. But when you're ready to take us into talking about like what kind of awesome stuff they bring to the table, let me know.
Yeah,
But if you got any other notes, go ahead.
It is important to note that if you guys are reading stuff like the wiki and so on, keep in mind that the wiki can be wrong. Just like myself and Loremaster of Sotek can be wrong with certain things, because obviously there's like 30 years of lore. But, like,
yeah,
when we go out of our way to tell you, that no, it's not like a certain thing is being described, because there's a lot of people who come up with this stupid idea that, oh yeah, Araby, suicide bombers and stuff. No, just keep that shit out of it. Listen, because that's what hurts the faction. If we want to see it as a playable faction in the future, go with official sources of lore. Go with official sources of lore, because it's important to keep with the official stuff and not some weird fan-made stuff or stuff like that, because believe me, it does more damage than good. Like, I want to see this faction playable. It's something I've got a few Warmaster minis of Araby. I love the lore of Araby. I've always wanted to see it as a proper playable faction. Just make sure you go with the proper sources rather than make it. I get it. Some people want their silly jokes, but some of the silly jokes do more harm than good. I'm just making a really important note about that, because we want to see more factions playable and so on. And let's just keep the false information out of this. It's important.
Yeah. So speaking of exciting things that they could bring, Nathan, what are some things off the top of your head that you think would, like, what is it about Araby that makes it stand out so much to you as like, we need these guys?
Okay, so Araby had an army list actually way back in the day through Warmaster, a long dead series, but it was basically Warhammer but without paying loads of money, because everything was kind of scrunched up and made really small and very difficult to paint. So you're gonna get something if you've played like historical Total Wars in the past. If you look towards like the stuff like just think about heavy cav and so on, but it adds with more. So you've got a lot of swordsmen, you've got a lot of bowmen. That's expected, because obviously it's a Middle Age inspired faction. You've got armored elephants, some standard elephants. We're going for the historical stuff first. Camel riders were also in the lore. The idea of horses were also quite popular, where a lot of the lore actually states that they could even rival elven horses in terms of speed.
Yeah, Arabian stallions were super badass.
Exactly, and that would be really, really cool. Then when we go to a more magical point of view, yes, a lot of stuff here comes a little bit stereotypical and so on, flying magic carpets, djinns, which are genies, but the lore was always kind of weird because they, like Sotek mentioned about 10 minutes ago, you said it's like, it could be elemental, they could be demon. It's always been a bit like we were never 100% too sure of what they actually were. Like a common theory by the fan base is that they're actually bound demons, which this is something that Sultan Jafar ended up being able to do. So there's loads of different stuff here. The army list itself didn't have a lot, but we more or less get that the Skaven learnt Jezzails from the Arabians themselves, which there was a model which was really, really cool of a, I think it was a sheik, and he had a Jezzail whilst he was mounted on a camel, which gave him decent movement, but he wanted the long range, so that means he was kind of like a skirmisher. I don't know how you can skirmish with a freaking sniper, but
yeah, I actually found the model. Yeah, there are camel riders characters that have long barreled guns. Which is can I just say camel riders with guns sounds like awesome. Like, give me ranged heavy cav. That's a rare thing with gunpowder.
I mean, the one thing that I've always loved about the army, it's just so different.
Oh yeah, all the camel riders have guns. Like, I'm looking at their minis. They all have pistols.
Yeah, they had because those were their skirmishers. So these were like the pistoliers of Araby, which was kind of cool. And they just had like loads of different like versatility. Obviously, like monstrous heavy cavalry with elephants and so on, which they wouldn't be as big as the Chaos Mammoths, but you'd get them in like groups of 3, I believe the minis were.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were actual monstrous cav based on actual elephants, as opposed to the Chaos Mammoths, which are gigantic monsters with a billion health.
So the idea of the army was kind of focused around skirmishing warfare, which was super, super cool. You'd have so much mobility with the camels, with the horses that could move really fast, and obviously with flying cavalry with the magic carpets being able to go around, especially if you had a spellcaster riding one, because that way you could get around and do some damage. Then you had pretty decent frontline infantry. Like you had some strong swordsmen with sword and board, able to go up front and hold out whilst you would go around. Think of this in a very similar sense to kind of like, say, Bretonia, but more focused on the ground. And obviously with gunpowder.
Yeah, I would say that Araby is probably most comparable to Bretonia, but yeah, they were much less cav focused, and what cav they did have was much lighter, but faster. So like they didn't have heavy cav. They had, well, their elephants were heavy cav, but that's monstrous cav. But their big thing was a lot of things in their army were very fast. They did not have a lot of heavily armored troops. Mostly things are light armor, but so kind of like how Kislev in Total War Warhammer 3 has like a lot of heavily armored troops, but like they have a lot of like range melee units. Araby was more about speed and lighter armor, but also had a lot of that synergy where a lot of units had bows, a lot of units. So there were a lot of bows, there were a lot of pistols, there were a lot of long barreled like sniper focused handguns. And I will say, when it comes to genies, I have a solution to the genie thing, and I've been telling people this because me and Nathan agree on a lot of things, but when it comes to Araby, I'm someone that likes Araby more as being a part of the Southern Realms, just because I don't think you could make 4 legendary lords and a full Vampire Coast size DLC for Araby. I think you could do it, but the time for that is past. I do think they could make up a quarter of a really badass Dogs of War faction or Southern Realms. But for the monster for that faction, like you have your elephants for your monstrous infantry, but here are your genies, right? If you go into the Monstrous Arcanum, there are these things called the Incarnate Elementals. And they're these giant spirits that are literally the embodiments of the lores of magic. So you've got like the Fire Elemental, which is this giant. I showed him on stream here a second ago, but like he's this giant guy with a flaming spear covered in robes and armor and stuff. You've got the Elemental Incarnate of Beasts, which is a giant like almost Wendigo antlered man creature that's super pissed off and has an amber heart and is super badass. And then the other one that we have art for is the Incarnate of Death, which is this also super badass twin-headed serpent that is like an Ouroboros, and it's connected by a hourglass to represent death. Which to me, these would be perfect monsters to represent Araby. And that like they're literally harnessing the winds into physical forms to fight for them as elemental genies. I think that would just be a chef's kiss match.
It's not bad, honestly. It's not bad at all.
Any other notes?
Right. Well, we can go from that. Let me just check over here. Well, what a lot of people don't seem to realize is, other than the fact of the Warmaster thing, which was what, 98 or something like that. It's quite a far time back. Araby still is canon, which is important, obviously. We do know that Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay keeps adding in some more lore, and that is actually tapped in by Creative Assembly sometimes when they want to create stuff for Total War Warhammer. Someone did tell me that I believe it was a few books that came out recently heavily fleshed upon the lore of Araby by even adding in a dice game or something like that, which is interesting because I haven't actually checked that out yet.
Yeah,
But
Araby, much like Cathay, and a lot of just the outer places in the old world has been getting tapped a lot in the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition.
So that means that there is loads of potential of it, because there's a lot of people who goes like, oh yeah, it's no canon anymore. It's like, no, if it's still getting some work somewhere, it's still canon. Like even Age of Sigmar references Araby when Gotrex is in some place. I can't remember what book it was, or was it one of the audiobooks, and he says it's hotter there than it was in the deserts of Araby. It's like, that's important. If it's still getting mentioned in Age of Sigmar, it's still canon. It's very important for that.
So, Intensity, I'm actually gonna call you out here because I'm curious for your thought on something. So, based on kind of all the various niches that many of the factions fill and how a lot of them play and stuff like that, kind of hearing us talk about Araby and stuff, do you think there's any particular niche that is not filled well by like particularly a human faction that sounds like they might be interesting to tap into, or any ideas that you think like what you're hearing as far as like the description and kind of how they worked on tabletop? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you on like what might be a really cool idea and how they could really add some spice to the game?
Yeah, so actually, I played a mod like a while back where they did have Araby.
Oh yeah, we have
So
to talk about that.
Oh,
But yeah,
man.
finish your point, but then we got to talk about that.
yeah, but it so from the mod and based on your descriptions, which very much aligns with how the mod sort of had all the units, except for the visuals on the genies. The genies look way cooler in the art because full production budgets, but um, it played very differently from like everything. So it, of course, like there were a lot of like sort of elvish sort of feels in terms of how they can kite and their mobility and such, but the gunpowder mixed in really, it just, I'm not sure, like the mix of the gunpowder, the sort of the focus on magic was like really unique. How there were like all these like cool spellcasters and extra abilities and such. So like yeah, like it's definitely different from a lot of the human factions, but it feels very different from a lot of all the factions. So like yeah, just the mix of all the elements. Um it yeah, just in terms of the mobility though, I think they would be closest to elves,
Yeah.
except yeah, with the slight differences in all those areas.
Yeah, that would kind of seem like it makes sense. Like maybe kind of being sort of like high elves, but a little more specialized in kiting. With like I almost said more magical focus, but with high elves, that's a ridiculous statement. But with a more like ground based faction. So like where high elves bring a lot of that flying capabilities and a lot of flying monsters and stuff, Araby would have those land based elementals, so like land-based monsters, and you know everything's kind of on ground and stuff. But of course, gunpowder is always the great equalizer. When you're like, ah, yeah, it's armor piercing. Something that elves notably lack when it comes to range capabilities, unless they're bolt throwers.
Mhm.
So speaking of that mod, I believe it's probably the mod Nathan, if you're ready to hop into it, is going to be talking about.
I absolutely like fucking love OVN Lost Factions. I think I've done a video series on it, like highlighting every different faction and so on. There's like 20 different videos. The Shaky and the rest of his team do an absolute massive work filling in the Warhammer Fantasy world with races and factions, and it is just huge, not only for Araby but for Albion and like the Amazons with certain things, and it is just a massive mod. It is one of, if not the best overhaul. Like, it's not even an overhaul mod. It's a faction mod, but it adds in so many different factions. OVN Lost Factions is just like, look, let's put it this way. When it comes to the fact that, like, obviously we play a lot of Total War Warhammer. The three of us here have what, thousands of hours at this point, and we keep
I try
playing.
not to think about it. I'm gonna die one day. I'm trying not to think about it. Okay.
When it comes to that, especially like, say for example, when we get like early access and stuff like that, you know, we put a lot of hours into, say, the Beastman and then Lizardman and stuff like that. We've played all the vanilla stuff to death, like, by that point. So, like, when it comes to something, I need something fresh, I need something new, because everything already, by the time it comes out, we've already played it so long, and, you know, you've got your speedrunner here, you know, you and myself all work around the lore about what's going on here, so we can have informatic videos for that. Then OVN comes into effect with all that just to bring in some new flavor, and it is done so well. They go into such deep lore just to make sure that everything's there. Of course, some creative inspiration comes into effect because, you know, there's no artwork for like 99% of Warhammer Fantasy in general. So they have to take some creative interpretation of stuff. But it's done really, really well, man. Like, I've recently been playing an Albion campaign. It's just so good. It is honestly so damn good. And the only thing that kind of ties it against is that you can't really do the custom voice acting and stuff like that. But other than that, like, the quality of some of the models is just freaking stunning.
You know, kind of funny. This is a complete side note, but it's worth mentioning. Is that there actually is a mod I need to show you sometime soon that has figured out how to put voice acting in the game. So maybe that's something they could look into adding with OVN to really spice it up. If they
Are
could
you
get
talking
like
about the overhaul game thing? The one that changes the game into Master Chaos?
yes, actually, yeah, I saw it on your channel. I was thinking about it. Yeah,
It's just a video thing. It's not full voice acting. It's just implementing a video on a kind of like Medieval 2 used to have when you used to send agents.
I see. Okay, well,
It's still really
yeah,
revolutionary.
oh yeah, it's so
like,
great.
damn.
But so yeah, and I'll be sure to have links to that. I'll be sure to have Nathan give us a shareable link for that to be included on the video and stuff. But so yes, definitely check out OVN. Was that the mod you were playing, Inticity, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. There was like a tournament on it. It was actually fairly well balanced, despite it being just completely fan made.
Yeah, I believe I forget what the creator's name is, but he puts in a just horrific amount of time on that mod. Um, yeah, so, some of the modders do really work incredibly hard to really keep the game spicy for multiplayer without just like completely blowing it out of the water. Because that I'm sure that is very tempting. You know, whenever you add something to the game, just be like, I like this thing, so I'm gonna make it just like absolutely ridiculous.
Well, there is that. I think Jafar has it where you can. It's the bounce spell with the snake, because that one was just absolutely ridiculous. But I think that's been balanced since I last showcased that, because I think it took out like 500 entities in one go.
Nice. um, all right. Anything else about for Araby?
Right. Well, we could look at some of the units that we've got here because, like you said, and to be honest, I agree with you as much as I don't want to agree with you. If they get added in, it's likely going to be with Dogs of War because what people don't know is they featured heavily in the Dogs of War work. And, you know, we got the Paymaster. There was also Legendary Lord, which was it Midas the Meme?
Yes. Yes, it was Midas, because but it's King Midas.
Yeah.
Games Workshop didn't try very hard back,
Oh,
back
at
in 6th edition. They were just like, hey, what's that famous guy called? Jafar? Yeah, let's use that.
Yeah.
No,
But
surely Disney will never be in a position to get us in trouble with this.
but yeah, there's actually quite a lot of stuff when it comes to Araby going into the lore, adding some units and so on. One of my favorites is obviously the Desert Dogs, because they actually were one of the best casts that were released around the 6th edition timeline. That was obviously it was a bit difficult because they were white horses, and GW's white paint at the time actually was kind of like enamel. But other than that, there was actually quite a lot of stuff here. The idea was to add in a little bit, which the Paymasters filled in the role for that. It's insane how much stuff they did get, and it does make sense to add it in because, say, for example, if we do get a Dogs of War pack, we could get 4 Legendary Lords, 1 Tilian, 1 Estalian, 1 Border Prince, and 1 Arabian.
Yep.
I guess that's the
Or
usual
Arabian.
term. Arabian. The thing is, what kind of sucks about that, which is why I don't want them to be parts of Dogs of War, who'd you pick? There are just so many characters,
Yeah, that is a super tricky thing. I mean, but I would hope that we'd get to see like some really flavorful like legendary lore or legendary heroes and stuff pop up. And that would definitely be a faction that you could add free LCs to, that everyone would just be super happy to get more characters.
Oh yeah, I mean, they'd probably go with like Marco Colombo because like he had like what, 12
Marco
images.
Marco Colombo is he a Stallion or Chilean? He's a Stallion, right?
A Stallion, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he is. I mean, he could be all right for Estalia. I think people would shoot us if we didn't say Borgio the Besieger for Talea. But yeah, Araby would be interesting because I mean they could go with Midas, but I would much rather have some kind of Sultan sorcerer. Like if you're gonna have a magic character, it's got to be the Arabian, on like with like a flying carpet as his like equivalent to a Pegasus mount. He does a flying carpet, and then maybe he upgrades to like a big war elephant or something as his big mount. But for me, it's like you gotta the magic character has to be the Arabian. Come on,
Yeah.
come on.
Unless they go for something like really out there, but most of them, like you said, like in Estalia to the Border Princes, they're mostly just fighters, aren't they? Like Lorenzo Lupo and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could see for the Border Princes where they could go, if they wanted to go really out there, is they could do Gashnag, the vampire. He's literally the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. That's his entire gimmick, is that he's this hideous Strigoi that's a giant monster, but he's actually super nice for some reason, despite the fact most Strigoi are insane, and he literally pays like troubadours and poets to sing songs about how handsome he is and that he's looking for a wife. That's his whole gimmick. But he actually like protects his village, and he's like super, or his princedom, and he's actually like super vigilant about like protecting them from bandits, and like he kills an entire ogre tribe by himself to protect them. Like dude's a badass, and he's super nice. But yeah, and but that would be such a wild pick. Like have a reverse Aranessa, which could be fun. Even though Aranessa is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Vampire Coast.
Yeah, I mean, as long as like it's not just shoehorning Jafar just for magic, because if that's the case, then I'd love to see like like Al Mukhtar as a legendary hero, because that would be freaking awesome.
Oh yeah. Or if they ever did bring in the Dogs of War as a playable race, I would genuinely be shocked if their regiments of renown were not like the actual badass mercenary regiments. So instead of just having the generic ones where it's like, oh, it's a regular unit but with a different skin or something, it's like, oh no, here's like Asenair the Dragon Lord, here's like the Desert Dogs, here's like all these super famous mercenary regiments as your regiments of renown, just to really spice it up for them. I think that could be super fun.
I like that, I really do.
But yeah, I do think that the Dogs of War / Southern Realms, it has incredible potential, absolutely incredible potential, and CA would be damn fools not to tap it.
The problem is like, isn't it like too late in a sense? Because this is what I'm thinking of, right? And it's going to sound stupid, but this is what's been running through my head a lot. The race itself is based on the old world. Of course, the Araby ones are based in the in Warhammer 2. If we move on to say Warhammer 3, because it's likely, you know, the pre-order incentive is likely going to be freaking Ogre Kingdoms. I mean, that's why we got the freaking mercenaries.
And plus they made a food pun. Like when they make puns, it's over.
Yeah.
It's all ogre now.
So, like, Warhammer 3 is based on the east. You know, you've got Cafe, you know, we've got the Chaos Holds to the north and stuff like that. Isn't it a bit too late?
I don't think so. I think where there's a will, there's a way, and also beggars can't be choosers, frankly. But I don't see a reason why it couldn't be that they're the dogs of war. If there's some opportunity where there's a god that's dying, you know, which we know is vaguely the plot of Warhammer 3, and these mercenary badasses see a chance for them to seize power and stop being minor nations in the world and become godlike in their own right, they would absolutely seize on that. These guys would invade the realm of chaos in a heartbeat because they're stupid and greedy, and that's why we love them.
It's just like, how would you need all 3 games to be able to get this DLC?
The way I would probably do it is kind of like, just think about how they've kind of implemented the Warhammer 2 characters, or the Warhammer 1 characters in Warhammer 2, right? Where they just kind of show up places. Like, does it make literally any sense for Thoric Ironbrow to be in Lestria? No. But he is. But there's no reason he should be there. But he is. And everyone just kind of was like, all right, I think they would literally just do the same thing. Of, like, just pick some dots in the world and have those characters show up there. And then when you play on Mortal Empires, they're where they're supposed to be.
It's doable. The thing is, obviously, like, there was that interview at the very big announcement of Warhammer 3 that they said that the campaign map was going to be around 2 times the size of this is just the standard campaign, not the Mega Mortal Empires. About 2 times the size of the Eye of the Vortex, and obviously there's a bit more land when it comes into that because most of the Eye of the Vortex campaign is ocean. What I'm scared of is another Lustria ball, you know, for Warhammer 3. Because I don't want to look at, like, say, for example, Koresh or Cafe and stuff like that, and it's just every legendary lord has been slapped in there, and it's just like, just for the sake of adding stuff, and it's impossible to move around without just getting into this massive mosh pit of everyone just absolutely attacking each other.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is we can't worry about something we just don't even have information on, right? Like, we don't know what the map looks like. We don't know how big it is. We don't know anything. So I think the most important thing we could do right now is to push for things we care about with the information we have. So keep fighting that Southern Realms fight. You know, we'll worry about the complicated crap when we're actually putting up a fight.
No, I panic a lot. It's what I do.
Well, yeah. It's hey, you know what? It keeps you safe, right?
It's just like you get these questions like, oh, why? When Forek was announced, I had a lot of people asking me, it's like, oh, why is Forek in Austria? It's like, I have to fucking know, man.
Because he is. that's it. That's the only answer you get.
It's like,
because he's there.
Why is Ghost a fig? Right? It's like it's just one of those figs that are.
All right.
For me, not knowing any lore, I was just like, oh yeah, there's dwarves in Lastria. I guess Thorax is just a dwarf that's around there, and
there you go.
I didn't know it all.
It just doesn't matter.
For people who aren't too well versed with the lore, that works well because you get a lot more fun factor out of it, don't you? Like, when it comes from a lore perspective, which I shouldn't look at it that way because so much has already changed lore-wise when it comes to Total War Warhammer. Like, sometimes I just get annoyed. It's like, oh, why is this guy here? He should be dead. Or, you know, Rapans, she's like been dead for 500 years. But I know I shouldn't look at it that way because I end up enjoying it. I think 4X campaign is actually really, really fun too. Just having something different, and especially when you get something that you didn't really expect. Because I was going to say expecting like I was still hoping for Boris, but I'm kind of tired of the Empire anyway, so I probably wouldn't have played him.
Oh, I'm sure the toddy's coming at some point. They're just waiting for when things get really desperate. Their backs against the wall. They're just like, there's I'm still waiting for the damn Red Duke. Come on, CA. Give us that Red Duke.
Same. I really like his lore. His book is actually really good.
Yes, great book. All right. Anything else? Or are you good?
I think we're good.
Okay. So real quick, before we get on to any other subjects, we do have a brief announcement, which is that we were reached out to by the developers of Warhammer Online: Return of Reckoning, which is of course the fan-made private server, which anybody can join, anybody can play. I'm actually going to be starting tomorrow, going back to playing that every Monday to run dungeons and stuff. But it is the Warhammer Fantasy MMO. It is a ton of fun, and we cannot tell y'all the specifics of it because most of it's still under wraps. But on the 18th of September, which is this Saturday, they are hosting a massive event. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, so I'll just be vague in that on September the 18th, if you should, I would highly recommend to be following the Warhammer Online Return of Reckoning Twitch account, because they're going to be doing an amazing interview. The guest they're going to have on is incredible. You will if you give even the slightest of craps about that game, you will not want to miss that interview. It's going to be amazing. And then after that, they are going to be hosting some really incredible events. It is dwarf versus greenskin themed. And so it is heavily encouraged for you to have a dwarf character or a greenskin character to participate in the fun. Apparently there's literally going to be a colossal slap fight somewhere in the world where it's literally open to anyone. So there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands of people, probably thousands of people fighting each other. I've even been told certain people, like certain guild masters and stuff, are going to have special ranks. So you're literally going to be trying to kill the enemy commanders and stuff in the midst of these gigantic sprawling fights. It should be absolutely idiotic and a ton of fun. And there's a big reveal of some sort at the end. I don't know what it is, but it sounds super exciting. So we just wanted to give a big shout out to those guys. They do incredible work. I've done a number of interviews with them on my channel. They work really hard, and they do it all for free so that nobody sues them. So they just do it out of the good of their hearts. So if you haven't already, be sure to check out Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning, or Return of Reckoning, excuse me. And if you're interested in watching the game or just checking it out, feel free to drop by my Twitch channel tomorrow around probably like 4 p.m. CST. So yeah, check that out. And then one of the last major things to talk about before we kind of get into last little wrap up things and discuss a few things is just brief Age of Sigmar news, just because we kind of keep tabs on that and keep up with it. For those who are interested in Age of Sigmar, 3rd edition is finally actually beginning because at long last, only 3 months after they started it, they're finally releasing the first army books. So they went on pre-order yesterday. But the Stormcast Eternal book and the Auric Warclans books will be coming out this upcoming Saturday. From the reviews I've read, they're very interesting. 3rd edition is looking like they're looking to simplify a lot of the unit cards. So do expect to be losing a lot of special rules, but it does seem to be making the game a lot smoother. And there's a lot of really exciting new rules. A lot of units got buffed, some things got messed with. I've heard Savage Orcs are like kind of really bad now, which is unfortunate. But the Cruel Boys are good, but I've heard the Savage Orcs are kind of bad. The Bone Splitters. And they lost, I think they lost like 72 of their special rules and only gained like 6. So they're kind of in a rough spot, but we'll see what's happening there. But the Stormcast Eternal's got a lot of goodies. I hear their new chariot is like amazing.
Surprise.
Yeah. Oh wow, the new models you have to buy are really good. What a surprise! Who saw that coming? What do you mean my old models are really bad now? Wow, never. So there's just kind of a heads up on that.
They look cool though. Like I do like the new Stonecast and so on. I've been painting a few up myself. The thing is, like, obviously, like you said, there's like a 3-month delay until the official start to the edition, which obviously could not be helped. That's really important to note because there has been a plague going on.
I haven't heard of
But
it.
they should have at least, like in my opinion, release some like online cards and stuff just to like get people going. And...
Yeah, I will note, apparently, and this is pretty cool, if you buy the army books, there's a code on the back cover. So like when you open the back cover, there's a code that if you scan on the it's not, they haven't updated or released it yet, but they're doing an updated app. Apparently
Yeah.
gives you a completely 100% free digital version of the army book.
Yeah, it's just like the 40K one, and I believe, thing is, I'm kind of old school. I hate digital stuff, so I normally have the books with me at all times. But I believe when anything gets FAQ'd and so on, they update the digital one. I might be wrong there. Whereas I normally just print the stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
Third edition's just started. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. I myself am very interested in the Cruel Boys. I was gonna play Uruk, but not too keen myself on the nerf to the Bone Splitters because I was gonna kind of bring in Savage Boys and like
Yeah, I've
Cunning
heard,
Boys.
I mean, I've heard they're still playable. Like they're still usable, but they've lost a lot of like. I don't know if you're gonna be able to run them by themselves, so to speak. But haven't got my hands on the book yet, so all this is kind of just stuff I've been reading on Twitter, and obviously when it comes to like tabletop, we're not gonna know jack about like what the meta is for like a good 2 or 3 months. So there's no point in panicking right now. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe someone will figure out a way to make Bone Splitters awesome, and it's really not as bad as it seems.
I mean, a lot of stuff, and they do FAQ quite quickly. Didn't they do a really, really fast one for Age of Sigmar recently?
Well, yeah, because they were really slow on the first one, and they accidentally broke the game in a couple ways, so they had to immediately release an FAQ for the FAQ to make the game playable again, because people were having, because they made us, they did some really silly stuff. So yes, the second FAQ was fairly quick, but man, I'm just glad we get FAQs. I still remember Warhammer Fantasy when that was like a pipe dream. You would never get FAQs. You were just arguing for rule. You were just arguing about rules until your head exploded.
Mm-hmm. It's just, why? It's so bad.
But I think that brings us pretty much to the conclusion for today. One thing I did want to ask Anticity about, kind of to get his thoughts on, is that we do, of course, everyone knows that it is Cathay month. We don't know when, but sometime this month, Cathay will be revealed in all of its draconic and celestial and jade glory. And what I'm curious for our multiplayer expert here is, do you have any hopes or thoughts or concerns when you hear about Cathay? Like, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to with their reveal, or anything you're hoping to see?
Ooh, ooh.
Not to
Just
put you on the
anything.
spot, but you're on the spot.
Yeah. Honestly, there's no concerns. It could be, actually, I guess there's no way they could make it mega bland or something. I can't see a world where it just goes terribly. I think it's just super exciting because, well, everyone knows why it's super exciting. I'm particularly looking forward to what type of play style they will have, though, because like it could be anything. So as soon as I get that, that's what I'm mostly looking for. Is like, are they going to be, you know, is it going to be like another elf faction? Is it going to be heavy magic monster based? I have no idea.
I would be
But yeah.
shocked if they don't have war machines and gunpowder.
Yeah.
I would be genuinely shocked, but I don't think, like, I could see cannons and I could see some kind of like rocket battery equivalent.
Yeah, I'm expecting a lot of gunpowder. Like, at this point, we don't know exactly what's changing in lore. I mean, the Kislev changes in lore kind of threw me off because we could expect an
So many
army
bears.
and then
So
just
many
so many
bears.
bears.
Oh, I guess that would actually be a better question. So we've actually seen Khorne and Kislev. What are your thoughts on those two?
Oh man, corn is gonna get cheesed so hard. I don't see how they're
When
gonna.
you say cheese, do you mean that people are going to like be abusive with Khorne, or do you think Khorne's? Are you saying Khorne's just going to get slapped?
Oh yeah, I think corn's gonna get slapped for sure.
Fair enough.
As
Fair
Hope
enough.
so.
if I had to put out a raw prediction, it seems close enough to vampire counts, unless the one cannon unit manages to really pull things through. I feel like they'll have some hard times, but I think Kislev is sick. Just nice range of tools. I think the bear thing, like some of the aesthetics bothers me a bit, but not like much to put me off it at all. And super unique too because it's all hybrid infantry, which is like you do not see that anywhere else. Like there's Lothar and Seaguard, but a faction of Lothar and Seaguard. So, oh yeah,
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yeah, when it comes to Khorne, he's like if his like flesh hounds slash chaos warhounds slash furies are not literally the fastest thing in the game, I don't know. Well, you know what? We haven't seen his what's that stupid giant demon called? The robot demon. The
Oh,
Soul Grinder.
Soul Grinder.
We haven't seen the Soul Grinder yet, and the Khorne Soul Grinder has some kind of range thingy. I think it's got like a cannon arm or a flamethrower arm or something, so maybe that'll save him. But yeah, he's gonna need unless because the only thing I was expecting to see with Khorne that I guess we really haven't was like an enrage aura. Because like if Scarbrand had the ability to just like throw down an aura that made people like kind of like what's her name can old hag Dark Elves Hellebron kind of like Hellebron can but Hellebron makes her own units go crazy. It'd be maybe Khorne needs something where he can make enemy units go crazy so he can force them to charge.
Yeah, interesting thing. I was playing a Norska campaign a while ago. They have a monster that you hunt that has a map-wide rampage mechanic, and it feels like perfect for yeah. I think it was like added for Warhammer 2. It's like on a Hydra, and yeah, it's just a map-wide rampage mechanic. So I got to sort of see how that would work, like in game, and I feel like that. Honestly, I have no idea because a lot of people really don't like Rampage, but
Oh
I
yeah,
think it'd be cool.
yeah. Khorne's gonna need something to allow him to survive not having skirmish or range units.
Yeah,
Like so, because like I'm with you. I don't know what he's gonna do against like mass thunderers or mass kite. Like if just a kiting wood elf or high elf army, I don't know what he would do.
just it'll be terrible, but I'm excited to see it. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been at the forefront of Duck's mind. I know Duck is working on Warhammer 3. There's no way he's not. Maybe they'll have some kind of like crazy army ability in multiplayer that helps them out or something. Well, great. All right, so I think that's pretty much everything for today. We of course will be on the lookout for Cathay stuff. We don't really have anything to talk about today regarding them, but as soon as there is Cathay news, you can absolutely bet that the next Lorebeards will be heavily dedicated to it, because that'll be just the main focus. And but that should be it. So real quick, before we go, I'm just going to kind of go down the list, and if everyone could kind of tell us just a big kind of like shout yourself out, let us know once again who you are, where people can find you, what you're up to, what kind of content you're working on that people can look forward to in the future. All those good shenanigans, kind of promote yourself here at the end. Anticity, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I am very much primarily multiplayer focused channel, going over tutorials and gameplay, live streams, casting games, the whole shebang for multiplayer. And primarily the thing that I'm working on right now is the Ent Ladder, which is an upgraded quick battle system for Warhammer Total War that has leagues, rankings, elo, and data tracking that you can all find on my Discord. along with a lot of the other major discords too. The bot is running on multiple different areas, and as long as you're in my Discord, it can be completely muted. You can go ahead and play on the ladder with better matchmaking to find opponents that are your skill level. Uh, Other than that, you can find me on YouTube. I post fairly regularly, maybe 3 videos a week, so you can see me fairly often on there.
Yeah, and for anyone listening on the podcast sites, Enticity is Enticity.
Yeah, just Ent, I, and then City.
There you go. Nathan, tell us, do the whole pitch thing and tell us what you're up to these days and what you're going to be up to soon.
Right, so usual stuff. I post on YouTube, Great Book of Grudges, near daily. Today there wasn't a video because I like to leave a day off when I do Lorebeards, so that means I can relax a little bit and collect my thoughts. You can find me on Twitter with T Grudges. I normally bitch there constantly, so if you would like that type of stupid shit, I'm there. And currently still trying to finish off a Armies on Parade board. Let's see if I can actually do this year. Really trying. Really trying.
I can't.
Failing.
You know, it's funny. I actually like have like a super nice board I had someone else make for me that's like designed for my Seraphon. It's kind of beat up though. I need to repair it. It's got some pink foam showing.
I've been painting up some Sineshi stuff, getting it ready, but the problem is that I've kind of gotten busy now with lockdown finally ending. I'm getting back to normal. And actually, yesterday I was demo tracking with my new band, so I'm getting ready for hopefully a launch of an EP in January. So let's hope.
All right. And then I am Loremaster of Sotek. You're probably familiar with me if you're listening to this. But if you're not, you can find me at lsotek on Twitter. I also have a Discord community. I stream on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/LoremasterofSotek, where I stream a lot of different games. I'm a variety streamer, technically, not just a Warhammer streamer. Right now, we are working through The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, as well as doing a round the world tour of all the different Warhammer Fantasy Warhammer 2 factions, doing like big long campaigns. We actually just finished our Emmerich campaign, which was a ton of fun, and the next time we do that, we'll be diving into Kroq-Gar. Though I also have been just starting to play through Pathfinder, the Final Fantasy MMO, and also going to be trying out Total War Troy very, very soon. That pretty much does it for today. Want to thank everyone so much for coming by and for watching, whatever platform you may be watching this on. We appreciate the support and hope you're all enjoying Lorebeards. We will have some super duper exciting things to share with y'all in the future, but can't talk about it yet, but one day. Hope you all have a lovely day. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend, whatever. We'll see you guys next week. Whatever. Bye. Bye.